In this lesson, I'll show you how to calculate probabilities of independent events. Now you're probably wondering, what is an independent event? Two events are said to be independent if the occurrence of either of them has no effect on the probability of the other. And we mathematically represent this as, let's say if we have two events A and B, as the probability of A and B is equal to the probability of A times the probability of B. Our first question reads, it is equally probable that the pointer on a spinner will land on any of the 8 regions. Take a look. And these regions are numbered 1 through 8. If the pointer lands on the borderline, you spin again. Find the probability that the pointer will stop on a number less than 3 on 2 consecutive spins. So we'll write down the probability of spinning a number, let's call it n, that is less than 3 on the first spin, and the probability of spinning it again on the second spin is equal to, well, let's count. Since there are 8 parts here, there are 2 numbers that are less than 3, 1 and 2. So we have a 2 in 8 chance on the first one. And on the second spin, we also have a 2 in 8 chance. We'll multiply these two. So multiplying 2 times 2 is 4, 8 times 8 is 64. And reducing this down, we end up with a fraction that's 1 over 16. So there's 1 over 16 chance that in the first and second spin, you end up with a number that is less than 3. Another way you could have represented this part would be to say the probability of n being less than 3 times the probability of n being less than 3. So that's another way to represent what you have here. Let's move on to question 2. Find the probability of having 5 baby boys in a row. The probability of having any gender is always half. So the probability of 5 consecutive boys is equal to, in the first child, there's a 1 in 2 chance. In the second child, also 1 and 2. 1 over 2 times 1 over 2 times 1 over 2. This is the same thing as saying 1 over 2 raised to the power of 5, and that's equal to 32. So if you have 5 boys in a row, there's a 1 in 32 chance that could ever occur. And of course, the same math applies if you're asked for girls. In the last question of this series, we're asked, if the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane in any single year is 5 over 19, what is the probability that South Florida will be hit by a hurricane in 3 consecutive years? So we'll multiply this number in itself 3 times. The probability of 3 consecutive hurricanes is equal to 5 over 19, that's in year 1, 5 over 19, year 2, and 5 over 19 in year 3. So we'll multiply 5 times 5 times 5, that is 125. And 19 raised to the power of 3, or 19 times 19 times 19, is this number, 6,859. What is the probability that South Florida will not be hit by a hurricane in the next 10 years? So for this, we have to find the probability that it will not be hit. And what we do is we subtract this from 1. 5 over 19. So this right here is the probability that it will not be hit in 1 year. Let's go ahead and calculate that. 1 minus 5 over 19. So the likelihood of not being hit by a hurricane in the first year is 14 over 19. Now we need to multiply this in itself 10 times. Of course, there's an easier way to do this. You don't need to use multiplication. You can just raise this whole fraction to a power of 10. They want 10 years. And the probability of that happening, so for 10 years that Florida doesn't get hit by a hurricane, is this number times 100. That's 4.71% chance of that happening. 4.71%. Remember, if you're being asked what is the probability of an event not occurring, you always subtract from 1. And there you have it. That is how to calculate probabilities of independent events.